Rashid. I'm the host of the Red Pill Diaries. I'd like to first, before we go live, thank each and every one of you for giving us another hour of your time and another day out of your busy lives. Thank you so much. It's very much appreciated. I also would like to ask you to subscribe, to like, and share the video. Before we go live, which will be going in just a few seconds, to my left or my right over here, which is your left, check out all of our social media platforms. Please remember to subscribe to those and go show your support. We hope to give you a powerful show. We thank you again for giving us the opportunity to come to you and give you unfiltered, unadulterated truth. Okay? Because we know in a time where lies prevail, truth is a rare convenient. And truth is a rare commodity that we must use to get to the masses so that we can empower them with wealth, mental, spiritual, and emotional wealth. As the world that we know dies out, and as the governments that we know who rule the world try to enslave us mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and economically. On that note, thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And also on all of our social media platforms here, go and do the same thing. We really appreciate it. Now, on to the fire. We're about to go live. Thank you so much. Peace. Enjoy. And blessings to each and every one of you for joining us this morning on the most powerful, most informative, and most educational platform, bar none, across the web, on any social media platform. This is your platform for empowerment, enlightenment, and education. This is the Red Pill Diaries. And I'm your host, Rashid, and I'd like to thank each and every one of you for giving me another moment of your time. And those of you who are just joining us for the first time, for giving me just a second thought to come and share your time, spend your time. I really appreciate it. Right now, we're waiting for Scott to come into the booth. I'll send him a text message in just a few minutes to make sure that that he has the right. As a matter of fact, while I'm talking to y'all, give me a second. I will send him some just now. Let's see. Hold on one second. All righty then. Let's see. Right there. I'm going to do it all live so you'll know. All right. Here we are. Yeah. Boom. Make sure you got this. So I just sent them another link. Now let me tell each and every one of you something. Sometimes I have to send links out multiple times from different emails. I don't know why, but sometimes my guests, they don't get the links, and sometimes they get the links and then they're not connected. So we know that that's the powers that be. But again, thank you for joining us this morning. It's 9 o'clock Central Time. It's 10 o'clock Eastern Time. So it's 8 o'clock Mountain Time and 7 o'clock Pacific Time. So I mean, I want to thank each and every one of you for getting out of your beds, or if you're laying across your bed watching it on your phone or your device. I really appreciate it. until Scott joins us, let's address a few things in the news, okay? Because there are so many things that are going on in the news that we cannot help but to address. We're going to go to a few things that have now made the news, and it's very important. All right, so and I'm doing this on the spot with you all, okay? And as we wait for Scott to arrive, hopefully he'll be in the booth soon. I just sent him another link. So guys, if you see me look down, I'm checking my messages, I'm checking text messages, and I'm checking my emails. Also, please hit the like and subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. The like and subscribe button. I would really appreciate that. You can hit the dislike and subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. I would prefer that you hit one of those buttons. It would take every bit of 1 or 2 seconds. Okay. Now, look at this right here. This, and I'm just turning to it on. This is the article here. U.S. national debt passes new landmark. Wow. U.S. national debt passes new landmark. What's significant about this? We're going to read a little bit of this and we'll try to chop it up. Hopefully, we don't even have to chop it up as much. Hopefully, Scott will be in the building. But listen, over $200 billion for Ukraine, right? And counting. While Head Start is being defunded, while the U.S. educational system is being defunded, while the people in Maui only get a one-time $700 check, while people are struggling to pay their bills, their medical bills, their mortgage, their car notes, because you have to have insurance for your home, you have to have insurance for medical purposes, gas money, car maintenance to get to your job. While people are struggling and it is starting to hit home, America continues to take taxpayer money and continues to borrow from the people that she has designated her strategic rivals, enemies, and immediate threats to her national security, while ignoring the cries, the pleas, and the begging of the masses of her own citizens. How is that logical? How is that rational? I want to ask you something as we read this. For those of you who are mothers more so than the fathers, if you have children, will you ignore the cries, the hunger cries, the cries to be placed in a nice home, the cries for blankets and pillows, the cries for you to be able to take a bath? Will you ignore that from your children to give your money to strangers to stay over? Would you? Oh, here's Scott. He's in the building. We'll bring Scott in now. So we'll let that thought on this national debt thing fester for a minute, and I got to bring my guy in. No more delay. I got to bring him in. Hopefully, StreamYard won't pull these tricks. Scott, how is it going today, man? How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you? Apologize for being late. My computer decided that it was going to shut down and reboot.
So, Scott, where are we at in this Ukrainian war? And again, before you answer that, I was just addressing the people that are watching. And I was reading an article, the title of an article on RT, and it says U.S. national debt passes new landmark. Now, with this $33 trillion in debt, the United States can't find money for the veterans who have fought in all of her wars, who deserve the loyalty of the government. They can't find health care for those veterans. They can't fund schools, Head Start, and all of the things that is, to me, more of a national security priority than the funding of Ukraine. But they can find $200 billion for Ukraine. Why is that?
Well, because the government doesn't care about the people, first of all. I think we need to acknowledge that straight up front. The federal government couldn't give a flying hoot about the average American citizen. We exist to go to polls, to participate in elections that apparently can be manipulated at will to get an outcome. Look, we're funding Ukrainian veterans. Let's put it that way. What we're doing right now with this $200 billion is we're sending money to Ukraine to fund their pensions, to fund their veterans affairs, to pay their bureaucrats, to fund their schools. We're doing everything in Ukraine that we're not doing here at home, which is all you need to know about this funding. I mean, we don't even need to get into that we're the fact that we've picked the wrong side in this conflict from a moral and intellectual standpoint. It's just that the American government cares more about the Ukrainian people than they do about the American people. And that's straight up being honest. There's not a Democrat, there's not a Republican in Congress who participates in a positive vote for the funding of Ukraine that can stand up before their respective constituents and say, I care more about you than I do about the people of Ukraine, because that's just a bald-faced lie. If you're somebody from the state of Florida, understand that we're willing to fund Nazis in Ukraine more than we are willing to fund hurricane recovery. If you're somebody from Hawaii, understand that you're saying that we're willing to fund Nazis in Ukraine more than we are. My dogs are barking in support of my affirmations. Than we are to fund. Basically, long story short, we care more about, but it's not even Ukraine we care about, because here's the irony of it all. All the money that's going to Ukraine, you'd think that it would mean that we care about the people of Ukraine more than we do about Americans. At least then you know where American politicians stand. There's some humanity in them, because they're saying we care about people more than we care about our own people, but at least we care about people. But we don't, because the funding of this war has resulted in more than 400,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. How can you care about Ukraine when you are funding a process that slaughters Ukrainian soldiers? The funding of this war has led to this displacement of tens of millions of Ukrainian civilians from their homes. How can you possibly care about this war if that's what you want? And lastly, all the programs that we claim to be funding, understand this: fully 60% of the money that we send there disappears into the pockets of corrupt individuals, politicians, bureaucrats, etc. We're giving money away to corruption. We're fueling corruption. This is the fact. And here's the other thing. People say, well, Scott, it's a war that was started by Russia. So no matter how inefficient this is, we're at least trying to do something to stand up against Russian aggression. Wrong answer. This is a war that was created by NATO, by the United States, by the Ukrainian government, that was foisted upon Russia and the Russian people. Russia has done everything in its power to bring this war to a conclusion. Russia started this war for the sole purpose of getting the Ukrainians to the negotiating table. They almost had a peace deal. This is something that every one of your listeners needs to understand, that in March of 2022, Russia and Ukraine had signed a peace agreement. Now let's talk about what that peace agreement would have been had it been concluded on 1 April. Forget about the details for a second. Over 300,000 Ukrainian men would still be alive today. Think about that. Chew on that. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men who have lost their arms, their legs, their eyes, their brains, their ability to function normally would be able to be regular, good members of society, able to support their families, etc. Millions of children who currently are now in refugee status, who are getting education on a shoestring in a foreign country, away from their homes. If you think about all the promoters of education here at home in America, what's the one thing they say that's probably the most important aspect of being able to successfully educate your children? That is a stable family environment. Without a stable family environment, it's impossible to educate your children because there are too many distractions to them. So if they had signed a peace deal, millions of Ukrainian children would be getting the kind of education one needs to grow into adulthood and succeed as an adult. Millions of Ukrainian women are being condemned to a life of perpetual poverty and indentured servitude. And much of that indentured servitude will be done in support of the sex industry in Europe and abroad. These women are being compelled to leave their country. They go into a foreign land where they have no skill set other than their looks, and they get involved in the sex industry, usually against their will. Human trafficking is a huge problem. Ukraine is one of the major, sources of human trafficking because of this conflict. We could go on and on and on about what has befallen Ukraine, all of which would have come to a screaming halt on 1 April 2022 had Ukraine signed a peace deal. Now, what were the Russians offering? I mean, let's think about it for a second. The Russians were saying that Zaporizhia, Kherson, two of the oblasts that today are part of Russia, Russia has annexed them through a referendum. Russia would have said, oh, those belong to Ukraine. The Donbass, Lugansk and Donetsk, rather than being part of Russia, Russia said they will be independent and we will allow them, once this conflict is ended, to go through an internationally monitored referendum to decide their fate. Do they stay independent? Do they return to Ukraine? Do they go to Russia? Crimea, Russia said that while it is Russia, we will have a referendum on, to what extent Ukraine will continue to be able to play a role in Crimea. The government of Ukraine, you get to be the government you want to be. Russia's not dictating your composition. Ukrainian military, we just need you to get rid of the NATO equipment, but not all NATO equipment, but we just need to guarantee that you're not going to attack us. That's all. We want you to be neutral and you can't be a part of NATO. But all of your industry, and that's the other thing, $1 trillion of infrastructure damage has been done to Ukraine. $1 trillion. Their industry has been gutted. That would all be viable today. Ukraine would be able to become a viable economic partner to Europe, to Russia, to whomever. And Russia wasn't dictating outcomes. Russia was saying, we understand that you're concerned about your security, so we're willing to promote Ukraine getting security assurances from the United States, from Germany, from France, from Russia, from anybody to guarantee your security. We're willing to do all of that. We just need you to say you're not going to join NATO, because we're not going to let you join NATO, because joining NATO is an existential threat to us, one that we're willing to go to war over. And Ukraine was on the cusp of signing this thing when Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of England, flew in and told him, on behalf of NATO, if you sign that, we walk away from you. We don't have anything to do with you. We're done with you. But we believe that you can continue this war and win this war, and we're willing to give you hundreds of billions of dollars worth of military equipment to do it. And Zelensky, the idiot, went, that's it. Tear up the peace treaty. We're going with NATO. They made the wrong choice. And now they are where they are today. But the American people need to understand that we're the problem. We're not the solution. Where do we get this money? We print it, which tells you something too, by the way. When the government says we have no money for health care, we have no money for this, that, and the other thing, they're lying through their teeth. Because believe me, when the pandemic came, all they did is hit the printer. They just printed money, handed it out. They could solve everything by printing money. Now, is that sound economic policy? Nope. All I'm pointing out is they're lying through their teeth when they say we don't have the money. They have the money to fund what they want to fund. But what they don't want to fund is the American people. They don't want to fund healthcare. They don't want to fund anything that makes the lives of the average American better. They could have solved the Flint water problem. You remember that one, don't you? The Flint water has been around for a while. People have talked about it. Barack Obama promised to fix it. He lied through his teeth. Donald Trump promised to fix it. He lied through his teeth. Joe Biden promised to fix it. He's lying through his teeth. Every politician will lie through their teeth because they don't care about the people of Flint. End of story. They just don't care. They don't care about Detroit. They don't care about Los Angeles. They don't care about San Francisco. They don't care about Middle America, Southern America, Northern America, Western America. They don't care about America at all. They care about themselves. They care about self-empowerment. They care about their portfolio. Why is it that Congress can have inside trader? If you and I did what Congress does when it comes to stocks, A, we probably wouldn't be here because we'd be sitting on a lot of money. But B, we'd be in jail because it's illegal. It's illegal to do what they're doing. But Nancy Pelosi and the Republicans and Democrats in Congress are all like, this is part of the secret deal. You see, we sell our soul to become a member of Congress, and then we come in here, and then we basically cash in. And part of the cashing in is the wink, wink, nod, nod they do with insider trading on the stock market. They're all making money in real estate, and they never have a bad deal. When was the last time a member of Congress had a bad deal? Because I know that the few times that I've gone out and bought stocks, it was a bad deal because I invested based upon a portfolio that said this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and I put in my measly $2,000, and I watched it as it became $1,500 and $1,000 and then $500, and I'm like, wait a minute, I thought the stock market's about growth. No, they never have a bad deal because they're playing the game. The game is corrupt. Again, not to get too far afield, but what the financiers call people like you and I who invest in the stock market? You know what they call us? It's dumb money. We're stupid, and we are stupid to invest in the stock market because the rules don't apply to us. The smart money comes from the investors, the professional investors. They get the inside, they get to work the after hours markets that you and I don't have access to, and all this kind of stuff. They get to play the game. They get to manipulate. The hedge funds get to go out there and try and make $1 billion overnight. When they fail, they get to break the rules and never have to pay up. You and I go out and try shorting a stock. Just try it. Challenge you. We won't last long. But let's say we short a stock and we fail. They're going to come back and say, you got to pay up now. If I don't pony up the $1 million that I have to pay because I shorted the wrong stock, I go to jail instantly. But not the big money. So the whole thing is corrupt. This Ukrainian conflict is just the manifestation of the corruption. And you have to ask yourself, why are we investing so much in Ukraine if we don't care about Ukraine? Because let's be honest, Ukraine was never going to be a member of NATO. They don't qualify at all. Never will. They're not going to be a member of the European Union because they'd immediately bring the European Union down. So why? And it comes back to the corruption. Ukraine is the greatest money laundering scheme in modern history. Ukraine is where the Joe Bidens of the world go to make money and launder money. Nancy Pelosi's son, Mitt Romney's son, Republican Democratic elect. You can go through, I won't mention this lady's name because she came from my alma mater and I used to respect her, but when she was in the Defense Department, next thing you know, she's got a photograph of her wearing a Burisma jacket. I'd like to check her portfolio out. The bottom line is if you touch Ukraine and in a friendly way, you're dirty. You're dirty because Ukraine is a walking cesspool of corruption. This is why we're doing what we're doing, because Ukraine has been involved in every money laundering scheme, black market scheme. The dirt of the world, the filth of the world accumulates in Ukraine. Every American politician who's involved in Ukraine is touched by it. They're dirty. They're filthy dirty. Joe Biden is a corrupt crook, a criminal. So is anybody who touched Ukraine. And this is the fact. This is statement of fact. I hope he gets his comeuppance. I hope that what I don't want is a politicized impeachment. I don't want Congress to impeach Joe Biden just because they're getting revenge on Donald Trump. But if we stand for justice, if we stand for anything, this man has taken bribes, straight up bribes, as an American politician. This is the kind of stuff you should be put up against a wall and shot for. That is treason of the highest order. But no, Joe Biden will continue to be president. Americans will continue to make money off of Ukraine. Well, Scott, how do you make money if we're sending them all the money? Because the corruption, and it comes right back at you. Mm-hmm. Look at FTX, that whole scandal about FTX and the way that worked out. The whole idea is you invest money and it comes back in the form of campaign donations. It stinks. The level of corruption is sad and maddening.
Before I ask you another question, Chong, let me put it up here real quick. Super sticker from Chung Chung, thank you so much. Super sticker from uh, Daniela Cutter. I hope I'm not butchering you guys' name, but if I am, charge it to my head and not to my heart. So, Scott, you being a veteran, um, does it not like fill you with rage to see how, on the one hand, the politicians talk a good game about I'm pro veterans, I'm pro military, I'm pro this, and yet they defund everything that veterans need, and they treat them once they come back stateside and get out of the military. It's hard for them to get affordable health care. It's hard for them to find living quarters. It's hard for them to make it in the average world because some of them are shell shocked from the wars, and some of them are having problems to adjust. And I mean, does it not fill you with rage when they can invest money into these corrupt schemes and then just throw away the people who they used in these wars as cannon fodder?
It more than enrages. I have to hold myself in check sometimes because the rage goes beyond simple getting angry to wanting to do something about it, and and what I want to do about it isn't permitted by law. So I have to hold myself in check. But no, I'm disgusted. First of all, to every American out there who has a yellow "I support the troops" sticker on your car, take it off, please, because you disgust me. You literally disgust me. If you claim you support the troops and you haven't spent some time at the VA hospital holding the hands of a 30-year-old kid who has to poop in a colostomy bag because he had his guts riddled in Afghanistan, or next door in the room is a 28-year-old kid who's drooling in a cup because his brain got addled by one too many IEDs as he did road security in Iraq, or the Vietnam veteran who continues to be strung out on heroin because he got addicted to painkillers, and then the VA dropped the painkiller medication. And that happens over and over now. We have all these kids that left the military. And you know who's suffering the most is our National Guard, our citizen warriors, because they got called upon, they got leaned on because, we didn't have enough active duty forces to engage in this 20-year war against terrorism. We brought out the National Guard, and then we extended them, then we extended them, then we extended them. And they did it, and they sacrificed everything. They sacrificed families, because, if you marry somebody who's going into the regular military, you should at least know what you're getting into. The divorce rate's very high in the regular military because it's just not a lifestyle for the average American family. People might think they want to support their soldier, their sailor, their airman and Marine, but about year 5 into your marriage, when your warrior's been gone for 3.5 years, he finally came home and he got orders and he's going right back. About that time is when most women go, I'm out of here. I love you. You're great. But I want a husband who's home, 9-to-5 job, white picket fence, raise a family, stability. This ain't for me. God bless the women who stay on because they are the foundation upon which military families are built. But it's not for everybody. But the National Guard guys, they're not meant, when somebody joins them, you go for, a weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. Every once in a while, if worst case, you can get that, 6-month emergency deployment, in which case the family bites the bullet and does it, and they're gone 6 months and they come back. That should be it. But what we did is we turned them into full-time soldiers. And so these ladies who got married and had kids, and suddenly their man's gone, and they weren't ready for it. And now they're staying with them, but he's gone. And the man who comes home ain't the same guy. He's drunk. He's on drugs. He's violent. He can't sleep at night. He doesn't want to be around you and the kids anymore. He's uncomfortable with society. He's broken. And you'd say, okay, that's war, because trust me, anybody who's been to war is broken. You don't come out of war unbroken. There's different levels of broken. Some people can cope with it. Some people can move on with their lives. A lot of people can't. And that's where society has to step up to the plate. We have to guarantee that their jobs are waiting for them. Oftentimes we say they are, but they're not. Promotion ability, they're not going to get promoted. They're not a part of their peer group anymore. They're just not the same person anymore. And so they suddenly find themselves without a job. Go to school, you say, go. Yeah, went to military to go to school. You try going to school with a drug addiction. Try going to school with your lower back all screwed up, or your knees shot out, or just your brain's not working. You can't sleep at night. You're angry at everything. Try going to college and function on that. So you get kicked out of college. You don't have a job. Now your family leaves you because, again, the wife's got kids to raise. She can't hang around a loser. And she, unfortunately, is starting to view you as a loser because you're not the man you were. You're not holding up your end of the deal. So boom, they're gone. So you're alone, you're abandoned. Your family doesn't want you home for the holidays. Next thing you know, you're on the streets, you're getting involved in crime, you're shooting up, you're getting drunk, the whole thing, your life's gone to hell. And then, what does America say? Well, he's a loser. No. This was a intact human being. And you sent him to war. And war broke him. He came back and you weren't ready to help him. You didn't have a receptive environment. You didn't give him a safe space because they need a safe space to adjust to peacetime. You can't take somebody who's been out doing what they were doing and suddenly throw them back into society. And especially if they're injured. Imagine this. Imagine getting your knees, your legs broken so badly that the pain never goes away. It's just there all the time. And they say, okay, well, here, let me help you recover. So they give you the oxy. And hey, pain's gone away. I can sort of get along right now. As soon as the oxy comes out, God, and I'm talking about debilitating pain where you're crying it's so much, trying to get out of bed every morning. More oxy. So you get hung up, you get strung, and suddenly out there, randomly out of the blue, they go, you don't get a prescription anymore. And you go, but the pain's still here, and I have an addiction now. So what you do is you have to go out and get the pills illegally. And if you can't, what's the next best thing besides heroin? Heroin's everywhere. So you go out and you get the heroin. You start getting shot up on that. Everybody's like, well, he's a heroin addict. You know why he's a heroin addict? He put his hand up in the air, took an oath to the Constitution of the United States, put on the uniform, went overseas in defense of you. And you. Now he comes back and he's broken and the system's failed him, and you're calling him a heroin addict. He deserves to go to jail. You deserve to go to jail. Every American with that yellow sticker on their car who claims to support the troops but doesn't support the troops deserves to go to jail. They're the criminals, not the man that's broken because of the war that he fought because he thought he was helping the American people. So it sickens me what we do to our veterans. It sickens me, absolutely sickens me, this. And then just to rub salt in the wounds, we send money to Ukraine so they can support their veterans. We take better support of Ukrainian veterans than we do of our own veterans.
I'll tell you. So, that was a lot there. It makes you really think. So, but transitioning, where are we now in the war? Especially as the transition of the United States is transitioning for the political season, that's coming up. Where are we in the Ukrainian war, and why can't America and NATO acknowledge the reality on the ground?
Oh, where we are is 400,000 dead Ukrainians, 50,000 dead Russians, hundreds of thousands more wounded on each side. A Ukrainian army that's being sacrificed needlessly on a battlefield in pursuit of objectives that are unattainable. We know they're unattainable, but we have them sacrifice themselves anyways because this is about politics, not about reality. We don't care about the Ukrainians. They are rapidly exhausting, they being Ukraine, rapidly exhausting their ability to sustain this conflict. We're looking at a potential collapse of the Ukrainian army in the near future. NATO and the United States can't acknowledge this. We can't admit we made a mistake. We've been selling this as an existential struggle. I mean, you've heard Jens Stoltenberg, the Secretary General of NATO, if Russia wins, it's a defeat for NATO. So now what? NATO's got to double down on stupid. America's got to triple down on stupid because that's what we're doing. We're going to extend this thing as long as we can in some vain hope that we can achieve some sort of, Moscow Maidan moment. Maidan being Maidan Square in Kiev, where they had the revolution in 2014 that overthrew the pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych. What's interesting about the Moscow Maidan moment is that it's also we're trying to do the same thing in Tbilisi, Georgia, the Republic of Georgia. It turns out that the United States is backing what's called the Georgian Legion, a bunch of Georgian ultra-nationalists who went to fight for Ukraine. They're being smuggled back into Georgia, and sometime in October, November, they're supposed to carry out massive demonstrations in Tbilisi, which will then turn violent in an effort to replicate what happened in Kyiv in 2014. And now, if we can overthrow the Georgian government, which has been refusing so far to participate in the sanctioning of Russia or open up a second front, then we can get that second front, and then we can extend the conflict, expand the conflict. But then what will happen? Russia will come in and destroy Georgia. It's a tiny nation, 5 million people. They don't have a military capable of standing very long. And Russia will destroy them, not because Russia wants to destroy them, but Russia has no choice once this kind of NATO manipulation of their government takes place. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to extend this confrontation as long as possible in order to inflict the maximum harm possible on the Russian military and on Russian society, in the vain hope that the Russian people will rise up against Vladimir Putin. It isn't going to happen. Putin's more powerful today, more popular today than he has been at any time since this war began. Russia, the economy is booming. The military is expanding. The patriotism in Russia is real. It's discernible. But we're not allowed to know this. As soon as somebody like myself travels to Russia, spends 26 days traveling to 12 cities, meeting the Russian people, comes back and reports accurately upon what I said, I'm a Russian propagandist, because the truth hurts. And that's their whole thing. Nobody wants to engage in a debate, a dialogue, a discussion anywhere on the issue of Russia, on the issue of this conflict. And if they have the facts, it should be an easy opportunity. Put me on stage, embarrass me. Confront me with my misperceptions, confront me with my lack of intelligence, my lack of insight. But it ain't going to happen, because I'm going to slam them on the mat. It'll be a one-sided fight because they just don't have the fact set. Any articulation they put forward will be articulation of lies that'll be easily exposed, readily exposed on the stage, which is why none of them want to do this. Nobody wants to participate in this debate. So what they do instead is they attack you. They denigrate you. They go after you. And Russian propagandists is actually the kindest thing they say about it.
So is it, I was reading Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, stated that in the last 3 months, Ukraine has lost upwards of 71,000 troops. That's slaughter. I mean, that's a slaughter on the battlefield. And yet the United States keeps pushing this. Isn't that tantamount to crimes against humanity for NATO to continue to do this, knowing that Ukraine has little to no chance of defeating the Russian military?
It's not little or no chance. They have no chance. And we know that. We knew that from the start. Look, if this offensive involved American troops, could you imagine, we start this offensive 3 months ago, and now the general comes in, reports to Congress, we've lost 71,000 Americans in 3 months. Congress would go, how did this happen? And they said, well, remember we told you we're going to have a well-trained army, right? Yes, and we gave you money for that well-trained army. We bought you equipment. What happened? And well, instead of the 6 months of basic training that is required for basic, so we gave them 21 days. But why did you do that? Well, because we had to get an army in the field fast. But 21 days isn't enough training to have a competent soldier, is it? No, but we were trying to make the perception that we had a competent army. We were telling everybody these guys are really good. And then, remember we talked about combined arms doctrine, Congress? Yes, we gave you a lot of money to create doctrine, to equip troops, and then to train them to effectively carry out combined arms warfare. What happened? Well, it takes 1.5 years to actually train people in combined arms warfare. We know, we gave you the money. Well, we did it in 3 weeks. So you took 1.5 years of training and you did it in 3 weeks to soldiers who were trained in 21 days when they need 6 months. Yeah, and you thought they were going to win against the Russians, who are dug in with a professional army, highly trained, highly motivated, well-led, well-equipped. What the hell were you thinking? See, it's called criminal culpability. At that point in time,
Yes.
Congress passes a resolution saying that these generals should be arrested and charged with criminal culpability, that this was criminal neglect, criminal negligence, that to send these troops into battle is in itself a crime, because that's what it is. There was no way in hell the Ukrainians were ever going to succeed. No way. They suffered 71,000 because they're sending them into impossible situations. Now, they have made some gains on the battlefield. It was God, they captured this village. They captured a village that was in the gray zone, the defensive collapse zone. They haven't even reached the first line of defenses, and they've lost 71,000 men. What's that mean if they ever did reach the first line of defense? What's that mean if they ever breached the first line of defense and were making a drive for the second line of defense? They don't have the troops to do it anymore because they're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they threw these lives away needlessly. This is again criminal neglect. This was never going to succeed, and we knew it from the start. We knew that they lacked the training. We knew that they lacked familiarization with the equipment. We knew that they didn't master the tactics, that they couldn't execute the operations. This was doomed to start with. The reason why is because, remember, when we talk about 71,000 Ukrainian casualties, you know, Vladimir Putin has himself said, look, we're slaughtering them. It's 10-to-1 casualty ratio. That means that Russia's lost 7,100 casualties. That itself is mind-boggling. You know, that's more guys lost in 3 months. That's twice as many as we lost in 20 years of the global war on terror, almost. It took us 20 years in Afghanistan and Iraq to lose 4,000 guys. Russia lost 7,000 in less than 3 months. Imagine the pain of the Russian mother, the pain of the Russian family, the pain of Russian society, losing that many guys. It's backbreaking. And then magnify that by 10 and you get what's going on with Ukraine. This war is a crime. It's a crime perpetrated by NATO, perpetrated by the United States. You know, the Ukrainian government is criminally complicit because they're doing this, but the guys I feel most sorry for are the average Ukrainian soldier, many of whom are just ripped up off the street, thumped on the head, thrown into a van, sent to a training camp. Sometimes that training camp is outside the country. Now, you know, and then they get 3 weeks of training. Then they're thrown back, and because they're not trusted, they're given a weapon and just a little bit of ammunition, but they're not given a lot because you don't trust them. And then they're sent to the front lines without any tactical awareness, and they're told advance, and they die.
Wow. Could you speak on this? I want to read something to you because this shows criminality to the highest level when it concerns NATO's push for war with Russia. And it was an article, I read it yesterday on one of my live streams, but it's an article that was published on RT, and it was called Prepare for Long War, NATO Chief. And it says, Jens Stoltenberg has said that the conflict in Ukraine will not end until Russia lays down its weapons. The West must prepare for a long war in Ukraine, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg declared on Sunday, despite claiming to want a quick peace in Ukraine. Stoltenberg insisted that he still supports President Vladimir Zelensky's goal of a military victory over Russia. Most wars last longer than expected when they first began, Stoltenberg said in an interview with Germany's Funk Media Group. Therefore, we must prepare ourselves for a long war in Ukraine. We're about to get to what I'm talking about. It says, according to media reports, over the last 2 months, Western officials and military planners have conceded that Ukraine's ongoing counteroffensive against Russian forces is unlikely to succeed, leaving the front lines mostly unchanged as winter sets in. According to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Ukraine has lost upwards of 71,000 men since the counteroffensive began in June. Despite this stark attrition rate, with some units losing 90% of their manpower, that's 9 out of 10 people. According to Ukrainian sources, Stoltenberg insisted that NATO will continue to push for a military, not a diplomatic solution. What do you have to say about the insanity of that policy?
You know, people who fought like that in World War II and wore Nazi uniforms ended up on the gallows a year later after the war ended, and that's where Stoltenberg belongs. I'll say that straight to his face. Your neck needs to be stretched because you are a criminal. And everybody in NATO, General Bauer, and everybody else who continues to push for extending this conflict they're war criminals, literal war criminals. Um, sadly, they'll never face that kind of final judgment because Russia's not in the business of going to war against NATO. And even if they did, Russia doesn't have the death penalty, so they'd be spared their pathetic lives. But these are people that deserve to no longer exist on this planet because of the harm and suffering they've brought to so many people. Jan Stoltenberg is a delusional fool, an idiot of the highest order. Pretty much anybody in the NATO hierarchy is the same because you can't participate in NATO unless you buy into the lie of NATO. NATO no longer exists as a defensive alliance. NATO exists as an offensive-minded extension of American national security and foreign policy. NATO's been involved in regime change wars. They've been involved in the assassination of leaders. They've been involved in, illegal wars of aggression. And right now they're involved in the propping up of a regime in Ukraine that has, breathed life into the failed and defeated ideology of Nazi Germany. The followers of Stepan Bandera in Ukraine are literally the progeny of Nazi Germany. These are people who, in July of 1941, went into Lvov and massacred tens of thousands of Jews. They slaughtered tens of thousands of Jews in Babi Yar. They in 1943, 1944 in Volyn, they killed over 100,000 Polish civilians. But what they did to the women, what they did to the children, what they did to the old men is just beyond imagination, but they did it. And then in the 1944-45 up until 1953, they were in the business of slaughtering Eastern Ukrainians for the simple fact that they spoke Russian. These are not good people. They are the worst possible people, and yet NATO is supporting them. The United States Congress is supporting them. The Congress that from 2015 till 2021 put in an amendment to the Defense Authorization Act that said that money allocated by Congress to the training of Ukraine cannot be used to train the Azov battalion because they are neo-Nazis and white supremacists. I mean, that's straight the language of the amendment. The same congressman that voted for that amendment because they recognized the Azov organization as a Nazi organization in September 2022 invited Azov representatives into the People's House in the United States Congress, where they were wined, dined, feted. They were allowed to speak. They were allowed to hold an auction where they auctioned off patches that contained Nazi symbology. They raised $30,000 for their Nazi cause in the Congress of the United States. We have lost our way. We are a nation that stands for nothing. And what my challenge is to the American people: what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about this? Because if you're going to vote for Joe Biden, you're just sustaining this nonsense. If you're voting for almost any Republican candidate, other than a handful that have articulated, policy against this, against Ukraine, you're voting to sustain this nonsense. RFK Jr. is, a man who's said the right things on Ukraine, but he's being lambasted. He's being attacked. Hell, they tried to kill him the other day. Think about that for a second. This is the nephew of John F. Kennedy. This is the son of Robert Kennedy. And they tried to kill him. That tells you everything you need to know about America today. That we are a nation that's lost our direction. And Ukraine is just the manifestation of that.
Well, why is Russia so patient? And I won't keep you long. Why is Russia so patient, especially as America and NATO continues to overstep every Russian national security red line? I was reading an article that you put up on Sputnik, and you were talking about the attackings, and you were like the latest American poison pill for Ukraine. Why is Russia allowing it? And because Russia has escalatory dominance, why won't they just put an end to it and just spell out the consequences? If you do this from this point on, this is what we will how we will respond.
All right, well, let me answer it this way. Imagine in 1999, you inherited your family home, and you had watched that. Your family home used to be a grand mansion, wonderful palace, great place, and you have fond memories of that. But over the last 10 years, it had been mismanaged by your siblings and such, and it was in decay. It was collapsed. Part of it had burned down. The yard was overrun with weeds and all this, and you inherited that. And then you spent the next 20 years fixing it, piece by loving piece, restoring it to its grandeur, making it wonderful, making it better than it was. And now you're at this home and you have a neighbor who now wants to get involved in a fight. Now, you've put the people you love, you've brought your family and you've put them in this house and they're doing well. Everything's going great. And now you have your neighbor wants to pick a fight. Are you going to, A, manage this fight in a way that you win, but you don't put at risk that which you love, your house, your family, the people that you've worked so hard to restore? Or are you going to throw it all away, get involved in something that's going to result in maybe your house getting burned down, your family members killed, and everything you worked for the last 20 years eliminated? Because that's what Vladimir Putin is faced with. In 1999, he inherited a cesspool known as Russia. Boris Yeltsin had spent the last 10 years destroying it together with the United States, NATO, etc. Putin inherited this, and he spent 20 plus years rebuilding Russia. Like, nobody wanted him to succeed. Everybody was expecting him to fail. Everybody wanted him to fail, but he didn't fail. He rebuilt Russia, brought him back up. He rebuilt everything. The economy is running. They take care of their veterans. Imagine that. They take care of their elderly. They fund the pensions. How homelessness is almost non-existent there because everybody has a right for a home, and the state will help you get a home. Healthcare. Imagine that. Free healthcare or very inexpensive healthcare. Education. All the things we claim we want as a society, Putin has given to the Russian people. Meaningful employment, pride in their nation, pride in being Russia, looking at the nation doing well. Why would he throw that away in a conflict that he's winning? You see, he's winning the Ukraine conflict. All these escalations that are being done are designed to achieve one thing: for Russia to overreact and therefore give NATO a reason, a justification to come in on the side of Ukraine. And so what Putin is doing is, isn't being weak. It's the strongest you can be. He's preserving that which he built. He's preserving Russia. He's not going to waste Russia. He's not going to allow Russia to be sacrificed on this altar of NATO expansion. They're involved in a very bloody conflict, a very expensive conflict. But he has adjusted to that. The nation is adjusted. It's not being damaged by this, fatally. It's chipping the paint on the wall. He can go back and scrape it and repaint it when it's done. Everything's good. But what he doesn't want to do is that the flame of the conflict converge on the house and burn the house down. So that's why they're being patient. Russia thinks in the long term. This is a loving leader of his nation who loves his people, loves his country, loves, everything about Russia, and he's not willing to sacrifice it on this altar. Now, he has said that if people try to eliminate all that, then he'll eliminate them too. But he wants to preserve Russia. One of the greatest compliments that somebody gave about Putin, because a lot of people sort of dismiss him. In America, we don't understand him. We don't respect his knowledge. I think it was the leader of Estonia, but one of the Baltic nations was talking about Putin the other day. And he said, we're going to have to learn to get along with Russia. We have to. Because they're a reality. They're not going away. And he said, and for those people who think that Vladimir Putin is somehow shallow, and all, he said, I tried to trick him in our last meeting. And I asked him about a poem written by Lermontov, a famous Russian writer. And it's a poem that anybody who has studied Russia, studied Russian literature, has read the poem, and it resonates deeply on issues pertaining to Russia, the Russian soul. He said Putin knew that poem inside and out. He talked on it for an hour and a half. He just went on about it. And he said, this is a man who is Russia. He's not just the lead, he is Russia. He is the embodiment of Russia. Russia seeps from his body. And this is the reality. And people need to respect this fact. Putin is a legitimate Russian leader. You don't have to agree with everything he does. You don't have to worship him, but stop denigrating him as a dictator, as an autocrat, as an oligarch. This is a man who bleeds Russia and has sacrificed everything about his adult life in service of Russia. And Russia's benefited from it. All you have to do is take a look at where Russia is today and where Russia was in 1999 when Putin took over, and understand that he saved Russia. He built Russia. Russia today is the Russia that's built in the, in the image of Russia as conceived by Vladimir Putin. But it's not as though Vladimir Putin's dictating this, because one of the key things people don't know about Vladimir Putin, because they believe all the Western propaganda, is that he doesn't dictate. His approach is to sit down and listen. The first thing he does is he comes into a room and he listens. He says, tell me. And then he hears. That's the other thing. It's not just about listening, but he hears it. It absorbs. And then he thinks. He considers. He asks questions. He gets answers. And from this, the accumulation of knowledge and insight then leads to a platform, a policy, a decision. But when he takes the decision, when he puts it out there, it's one that the people are in agreement with because it reflects what they told him. So the Russia of today isn't a Russia that's solely based upon what's in Putin's mind. It's what's in the hearts of the Russians who have spoken to Putin over the course of the past 20 years. It is a Russia, Abraham Lincoln gave a great speech, the Gettysburg Address. One of the best lines in the speech is that government of the people, by the people, for the people. And what people need to understand is that Putin's Russia is a nation built of the Russian people, by the Russian people, for the Russian people. It's the most honest expression of Abraham Lincoln's term that one could possibly imagine. I wish only that American politicians would treat us with the same respect that Vladimir Putin treats the Russian people.
Now, in closing, because, man, I mean, you gave me your time, but I want to ask you something. I just saw something on the news breaking, and this is, again, something that involves Russia and maybe the United States. On RT, it says Azerbaijan has unleashed large-scale aggression, according to Armenia. And the headline says, Baku has declared a counter-terrorism operation over Yerevan's alleged military presence in Nagorno-Karabakh. So what is going on here, and how is that supposed to shape the Caucasus and the battlefield over there between the United States, NATO, and Russia?
Well, this is going to be what's happening right now is going to be a huge tragedy for the Armenian people of Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh is what the Armenians refer to it as, is an enclave that is the majority Armenian population. But because of the vagaries of history and the way that Stalin and Lenin built the Soviet nation, it's a pocket of Armenians who reside in the Azerbaijani Republic. And in 1993, Armenia fought a war to bring Nagorno-Karabakh into Armenia. And so they actually ended up occupying about 20% of our Azerbaijani territory, creating a land bridge connecting Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia. And that remained frozen up until last year or 2 years ago when Armenia counterattacked, launched their own offensive to regain their territory. But from their perspective, Nagorno-Karabakh is their territory. Under international law, it is their territory. And by defeating Armenia on the battlefield, which they did handily, the Armenian government had to acknowledge that Nagorno-Karabakh, as part of the peace deal, was going to be under Azerbaijani control. And as such, the Armenian military had to leave. But the problem is the Azerbaijanis were giving lip service to issues of autonomy but they were actually very brutal towards the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh, showing no respect, digging up cemeteries, tearing down cultural things, blowing up churches, etc. So everybody who was there knows that if the Armenian military left, that it was going to be hell on earth for the remaining Armenian population, hundreds of thousands. Russian peacekeepers were there, but the Russians have to abide by the terms of the agreement, which is the Armenians have to leave. And then the Russia will, provide the security guarantees, but the Armenians wouldn't leave. And so what Azerbaijan has done is launch what they call a counter-terrorist operation, because to them, any Armenian soldier that remains in Nagorno-Karabakh is a terrorist. They shouldn't be there by treaty. So they're going to not only eliminate the Armenian military presence, but I think that this is tragically going to end up with the mass expulsion of Armenians from their hereditary territories in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's happened before. I mean, in modern history, if we take a look at, for instance, what happened to Georgians in Abkhazia in 1993, where 250,000 of them were expelled from Abkhazia in the aftermath of a Russian-backed insurrection that overthrew and ousted the Georgian. 250,000 Georgians were ethnically cleansed to give Abkhazia. The Abkhaz used to only be 17% of the population, but now they kicked out the Georgians. They become the majority population. In Croatia, there was a huge area where there was a big Serbian population, and before that conflict could come to an end, before they could have the Dayton Peace Accords, the United States facilitated the Croatian military in expelling the Serbian population, creating ethnic purity in the zone of Croatia, so you didn't have this problem. I think that's probably what's going to happen with Nagorno-Karabakh. I ultimately think that this conflict doesn't end until hundreds of thousands of Armenians are compelled to flee Nagorno-Karabakh, go to Armenia, and the Azerbaijanis take over this territory and incorporate it into Azerbaijan as a pure Azerbaijani territory. I'm not supporting this. I don't support anybody being kicked out of their home, especially when they've been living there for thousands of years. But sadly, I think that's going to be the outcome, because the Armenian government can't function properly. They fought a war they shouldn't have fought. They lost that war, and you got to understand, when you lose a war, it's like losing an election. There's consequences when you lose an election. When you lose a war, there's consequences, and the Armenian people haven't quite understood what these consequences are. It means they lost. And the Azerbaijanis are reminding them that they lost. The danger here now, we have to be careful, we being the collective in the world, is that this conflict, if it grows out of control, could expand. Iran has already said that they will, if Azerbaijan seeks to take out the Lachin corridor connecting, if they take that out, then Iran will jump in on the side of Armenia. Turkey would then jump in on the side of Azerbaijan, and we could have Turkey fighting Iran over this. And then Russia's in the middle. Russia will have to, pick a side or get out. This thing could get out of control real quick, but this is a big deal. But I personally think that the Armenians know, for instance, I think the foreign minister just came out and said that Armenia will not go to war over Nagorno-Karabakh, meaning that because they know what the consequences would be, the destruction of the Armenian nation. And so I think, sadly, this is going to be a situation where the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh over the course of the next months, years, is going to be squeezed out.
Is that not Russia allowing this to happen? Because I know that Russia is suspicious of the Armenian president and his administration in their moves towards the U.S. and NATO. And that'll be my last question to you, because I know you have other things you have to do.
I can't say that Russia's allowing this to happen, because again, Putin's we can't on the one hand say Putin has patience in Ukraine and then suddenly claim that he acts like a petulant child in Armenia. He's the same leader. Armenia's created its own problems. It's not that Russia's created the problems for Armenia. Armenia's created its own problems. Russia is there. They have peacekeeping troops there trying to implement this deal, but it's a tough deal. And remember, it's not so much that Armenia has gone over to NATO. Azerbaijan is allied with a NATO member. Turkey. Azerbaijan is friendly with Israel, friendly with the United States. So, it's Azerbaijan has gone to the dark side. If anybody's gone to the dark side of these two, but Armenia has, feels they've been unreasonable about Nagorno-Karabakh, unrealistic about it. If they had accepted autonomy early on, this probably could have been resolved one way or another. But once a nation goes to war, once a nation sacrifices, shed blood and stuff, you've committed to a course of action. Azerbaijan is committed now to a course of action that is going to result in the absorption of Nagorno-Karabakh into Azerbaijan proper. And Armenia has just made the wrong decision every bit of the time. It's not Russia's fault. But Russia's not going to go to war against Azerbaijan for Armenia, not under these circumstances. Russian peacekeepers are there, but remember, peacekeepers can only operate if both sides to the conflict want them there. This isn't where Russia's injecting itself in against the will of another. The peacekeepers came because both Azerbaijan and Armenia said, we want you there. But if one side decides that we no longer want the peacekeepers there, there's no role for the peacekeepers to play anymore, and they will have to withdraw. And if that happens, then it's all bets off for Armenia. What Armenia needs to wake up and understand is that the best bet for their survival as a nation is Russia. But in order to do that, Armenia's got to start playing the game based upon reality. You can't sit there having lost a war that, remember, 1993, that you started. You, Armenia, started this conflict. You're the ones that went in and invaded and seized 20% of Azerbaijan territory, then held it for close to 30 years. Now Azerbaijan's come back to right that wrong, and you're on the receiving end of military defeat. How do you think Azerbaijan felt losing 20% of its territory back in 1993? Probably not too good. Pretty much how Armenia feels right now. Armenia, it's like the situation with Ukraine. Ideally, it would have been nice to have a solution to this problem that would have allowed Ukraine to remain intact, not to have the Maidan. Imagine if there wasn't the 2014 Maidan. You know where Crimea would be today? Part of Ukraine. Same with the Donbass, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia, because Russia never wanted to forcefully seize them. Russia wasn't moving that direction. Russia just wanted that the rights of the Russian people who live in these territories to be respected. That's all. Had Ukraine behaved responsibly, they'd be intact. There'd be no issues. Now look at Ukraine, torn apart, ripped up, dying. Armenia, all Armenia had to do was, they could have cut a deal with the Azerbaijanis that said, yes, Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan, will be governed by Azerbaijan, but that Armenia will retain strong cultural ties, that we will have ministers of culture, ministers of religion, the faith will be there. In Azerbaijan, when it went, sure, why not? But instead, you went to war. And by going to war, you reap what you sow.
On that note, Scott, I can listen to you all day long, man. I'm telling you, I just love your conversation. I love your thought. I love to pick your mind on all of these issues, man. Thank you so much for joining us, for giving us your time, man, because you are one of the most busiest guys on planet Earth, and we really appreciate this. Check your email in a few minutes, too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good talking to you.
All right. Bye-bye. Everybody, thank you all for joining us on the most powerful platform for truth. This is the Red Pill Diaries. We just brought you Scott Ritter. Thursday, we'll have Martin Saif on the channel. He is an author, columnist for Fox News, and we'll be talking about this very situation, and we'll have more guests to come. Hit the like button. We had over 200 people in the building, and we only have 53 likes. Come on, you guys do better. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to hit the like button. But anyway, on that note, know that I love you if you love truth, but remember that I can never love you as much as the true and living God will love you. He will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you so much.